one piece of advice you'd offer somebody who's hesitant about starting a life of travel?
Just buy the fucking ticket. Once I got a taste of what it felt like to be out in the world, my favorite word to use is alive.
20 years ago, Adrian Landon, traveler, storyteller, and creator of With Gusto, walked away from the American dream and never looked back.
I didn't want to be on my deathbed with regret.
Since then, he's shoestring traveled to nearly 80 countries, building friendships in places most people only see on postcards. But this isn't a story about ticking countries off a list. It's about walking away from the script you were handed and finding out who you are when you're thousands of miles from home.
The word ignorance is so misrepresented. All it means is not knowing.
As years passed, he learned that the most valuable currency isn't money, it's human connection. And he's used it to power micro-donations for strangers turned friends, creating real-world impact.
Within 48 hours, I had raised enough money to pay her salary.
In this episode, we talk about the power of leaving, the risk of regret, and the beauty of finding yourself in a place where you don't speak the language, but still understand everything that matters. If you've ever felt a pull to walk away from it all, to trade uncertainty for the unknown, this episode is the nudge you've been waiting for. This is my conversation with Adrian Landon.
Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. I've been looking forward to chatting. Yeah, to answer your question off air, I'm in Belize, so I'm in a community sort of touristy area called Placencia, and it's a peninsula, so I'm on like a little sub community. People will kind of colloquially call it an island, but because it's sort of like island life, but it is connected to the mainland. So yeah, so it's in the southern part of the country, not fully south. It's sort of like kind of mid-south.
I'm not really familiar with Belize. I've only been there once and spent a week, a couple of days in Belize City, and then I think 4 nights in Cape Cocker.
Yeah, that's a cool spot. We like that. We like that place. We haven't been there since moving here, just with the kids and stuff. We moved here when they were really young, so it's been like tough for the first like few years to like really do anything with like a toddler and like our youngest was only 7 weeks old when we moved here. So yeah, and with no family to help and that kind of stuff. So childcare was all on us, and so yeah, we're just starting to like get back into doing things again. We actually got a friend who's taking us out on their boat to watch the sunset in the lagoon tonight, so that'll be pretty sweet. The kids are old enough that they can like safely do that, so
yeah, honestly, one of the reasons why I was so without a question of when you reached out of saying yes is I think it's really important for people from North America to understand that you can do what I don't have any kids, and a lot of people hinge what I do upon not being married and not having any kids. You're married and you have kids and you have young kids and you're still willing to take a leap of faith. And I know for a fact your kids will be more rounded, better human beings getting the education that they're going to have at such an early age from being immigrants and having parents who have the mind, the wherewithal to know that there's other ways to raise our children other than how it's expected in Canada or America.
Yeah, for sure. This was definitely something I wanted to get into. So yeah, that's interesting that you bring it up. Because I actually, on my Substack, I wrote like a piece about why I'm not going to encourage my kids essentially to go to university, and instead I'll like encourage them to travel. Obviously, like if they want to go to university and that's really what they want to do, then yeah, they can, I'm not going to prevent them from doing it. But if they don't really know what they're going to do, I would encourage travel, because I feel like travel, and I know you've written about this too, like it's like unconventional education, really, right? Like everyone nowadays has this like, oh, you had to get a degree, and that's how you receive an education. But really, travel offers you like such a rich education, and it's like a life education, a cultural education, right? And is that part of like your ethos? That's the reason why part of why you want to travel is to like expand your mind and your experience?
I'll circle back to that. As I mentioned a minute ago, I don't have any kids, but I always told myself if I did, I would make them sign a contract that before they were 30 years old, they would have to travel. That's kind of tongue in cheek, but the education and circling it back to what you're asking me, I think I graduated from college and I haven't used my degree. Now my lifestyle is a little bit unconventional, but I haven't used my degree once. But what I've learned throughout my education of traveling the world, I've used time and time again, right? Like the empathy and the compassion and the tolerance that you're taught up close and personal when you are in places where you don't speak the language, where you have to rely on strangers. Those are the tools that I'm interested in sharing with other people.
And I find too that it's like an ignorance killer, essentially. Like you have all these preconceived notions about like certain countries and certain people, and you were shown that you were incredibly wrong in thinking those things about the people. Like you were essentially like there was some sort of inherent judgment, or and that kind of is often like just thrown in your face when like you said, like you're in a position where you have to like trust somebody, and conventional wisdom tells you like you shouldn't, that you're going to get robbed, you're going to get taken advantage of, and then people really just show you that they just want to help. They're just humans wanting to help another human in need. If I know you spent lots of time in Southeast Asia. I spent some time in Southeast Asia as well. And, a perfect example of this was we were in Laos, Ta Kek, that place. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that? Mm-hmm. At the time, there was like this 400... the loop. Yeah. So I did the loop in 2007. And we had all these breakdowns because, you rent these little 60cc bikes and you're on essentially like off-road. And they break down. We blew one guy that we were with, pretty big dude. He was like 220 pounds and he was just blowing rear tires like every day. And
that's like 3 Laotians. Right.
Yeah. And we broke down, like he got a flat tire, and we pulled up to this like village, and it was getting to be pitch dark. We don't speak any like a lick of Laotian, and it was like kind of scary at the time because the whole village came out to see these white dudes on bikes. And like we could have we could have easily been just disappeared, right? And this was before like we didn't have cell phones, but essentially the entire village came out. People were like holding the light for a couple of guys. They fixed the tire, and again we were like, okay, we're just gonna get hosed here because like we're at a loss, like we have to get this fixed. And it was $2. It was $1 to pay for the labor and $1 for the tire. And we tried to give the guy more, and he was like, no, this is what it costs. And he could have totally taken advantage because we were in a bind, right? And it was just like a super eye-opening moment for me. And like we were in this village that was very poor. Like at the time, I think Laos was third poorest country in the world. Yeah, they could have just been like, this is $100, and we would have just pooled our money together and paid it, right? But that was not at all on the radar. They were just super honest. And yeah, and it's like, this is like 20 years ago, and it's always stuck with me. I will never forget that, because conventional wisdom would have told us like, you're screwed, you're going to get hosed here. And that's not what happened at all. And I think, you don't get those experiences in your home country.
Well, you kind of, on something that I shared maybe 2 weeks ago, you in brevity shared that little nugget. And I remember feeling like, okay, to speak on what we were saying a minute ago, the word ignorance is so misrepresented. All it means is not knowing. And by definition, Americans are ignorant because we don't know what it's like to step outside the borders of this country. And what you just experienced, or what you explained you experienced in 2007 in Laos, is an ignorance dart. Your bubble was bursts, and it may have been done before then, after then, but that was a perfect example of what it's like. And I've been in plenty of situations where I could have fully been taken advantage of. And in those situations where you're expected, or where I've been expected to be taken advantage of, is when it doesn't happen. And you try to give a little bit more, and they don't want to take it. They're thrilled to be helping. They're thrilled to be showing, they're thrilled to be teaching, whatever it is, right? Whatever the emotion. When you wrote that and I read that, I was like, okay, this guy's he has an experience where he understands that it's sometimes, I think it was a little note that I wrote about the people who have the least are also the ones willing to give the most.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because like these people in this village, like it was, this is bamboo walled huts. It was nighttime. You could see like a candlelight inside, and you could see into the wall. Like you can, like these people could have used that extra money, but it just wasn't even on their radar to be like, yeah, I'm going to ask for more or take more than what it actually just costs. And it was an amazing moment. I know for like me and the other guys I was traveling with at the time, and
you and I can talk about it on this podcast and your listeners can hear about it. But until you actually witness it, feel it, we can explain it with words, with the video, with voice. But once you're there and you see these people who are living off the law of the land, like you said, bamboo huts, makes me think of walking down the street in Burma and seeing these houses that are literally held together by wire and shoelaces, and these people wanting to share their food with me, just because we walked down the alley. It's like they feel honored, even though they have literally nothing other than the dirty clothes that they were wearing. They want to share, or they want to see the pictures that we had just taken, and then they want to take their cell phone and take their own pictures, and just the joy that you're able to witness in these people who have materialistically not much at all, but there's a spirit and there's a resiliency that they embody that I think keeps people like you and I interested and intrigued.
Yeah. And there's just like a innate human nature, that they just like exude, that I think we get lost in material culture, in the West. And, it's just, everyone's trying to get one over, it seems like, on everybody else, and get the next best thing and show it off. And there, it just wasn't. And the thing is, that wasn't even the only example of this. Same guy blew another tire like the next day, and the same thing. It was like kind of getting into nighttime, and this family that owned a store, they like fired up the generator for their entire house. The husband came down, he did all the labor, fixed the wheel. And there was an expense there for them to just run their generator. Like they were all closed up for the day. And, and again, like we tried to offer them more, for the fix. And then they actually just said, no, just buy something from the store. So we're like, okay, which we did. Yeah. But again, it's just like, that was just a very like equitable transaction, right? They weren't asking for anything more. They were like, yeah, you can help us out by just buying something, which, obviously they have inherent costs in that as well. So it was just like, these were just amazing experiences. And I loved Laos as a result. Like it's one of my favorite countries. What about you? I know you've been to 80, so that's going to be a tough one to probably pin down a favorite, but what is in like your, say, top 5 favorite countries that you've visited?
Wow. I'm gonna just sort of hit that with one silver bullet and say Southeast Asia. I had been to 56 or 58 countries before traveling to Southeast Asia for the first time, and once I got there, it was like I had never traveled before. It was so different from anywhere else I had been in the world. It was the first time I had crossed into the East, right? The first time I'd been into an Asian culture. And, it's interesting. I think anyone who goes to that part of the world, that region of the world, and they're struck by it in the same manner that I was, whatever country it was that they entered, whether it was Vietnam or Indonesia or Thailand or Cambodia, 9 times out of 10, that individual will say that country is their favorite country in Southeast Asia because it's kind of where they were baptized into the culture, right? So for me, it was Thailand, June of 2004. And I wrote about it. I've written about it a couple of times, but I knew the very first day that I arrived in Thailand that I would never stop going back. And 21 years later, it's true.
So what is it about a place then that, like, I know you mentioned like it was like the first place in Southeast Asia that you entered, but is there something more to it than that?
Yeah, that was day one. So it couldn't have been much other than energy. The culmination of seeing, farm to street stall, the monks walking around barefoot at 5 o'clock in the morning, the second morning that I was there, being able to eat some of the best food I've ever had in my life for less than $1. Seeing the infamous Thai smile, it's nicknamed the land of smiles.
Yeah.
The spirituality, where I stayed that first time is close to the royal palace. So nothing can be built higher than the royal palace. So it felt really small. Even though Bangkok's it is the metropolis of Southeast Asia. Where I was, it felt really old. And I love it. I remember the way it smelled. I remember the way I felt. I remember the way it felt. It's hot. It's humid. But I grew up in Dallas, so that's not too big of a shake for me. But lo and behold, for me, it's always been about the people. It's not much about culture for me. It's how the people show up within that culture. And as an outsider, when I spent years in Western Europe, and I was always mistaken for Italian or Greek, or my dad's Mexican, so I'm half Mexican. But I show up in Asia, and there's nobody mistaking me for Thai or Cambodian or a local. So being able to truly be treated as an outsider and still be accepted, it was special for me.
Yeah, you're just you're through and through Farang.
Yep, that's it.
When we were in Cambodia, a buddy that I was with, he's like Irish background, so he's like very pale, kind of blondish red hair, quite hairy, and the Cambodian people just absolutely just were drawn to him, and everywhere we would go, he was like some sort of movie star or something. And people would come up and they're like taking photos with him and playing with his arm hair and, taking his sunglasses off and putting them on and doing selfies and stuff. And it was like, it was a trip to be like treated like a spectacle to some degree. There was like a bit of a novelty to it. And in that environment, it was like quite harmless. So we could kind of roll with it. In places like we found in Bangkok in what's that street? What's that famous street there where all the backpackers go?
Khao San.
Yeah. And like you get the dudes making the suits and stuff, and they just like come out and practically mob you and grab you and throw you into their store. Yeah, that was a little bit harder to deal with, but these memories just it's amazing how like vivid and clear they stay with you when they have like so much meaning. They just shake up your world to a point where you just like you can't forget it.
I've spent quite a bit of time in Thailand and lived in Chiang Mai for a couple of stints. And you mentioned Khao San. It's probably one of the most famous streets in the world, and it gets such a bad rap from people who have spent or expats who live in Thailand. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of those people that complain about that area, they started out there. And the reason why they love Thailand started out there. One of the reasons why. I love that area. I still go back to that area because it's the one street that I've been to in the world where you can find 100 different cultures in one swoop down the street. I've made some really great friends on that street. I've had some bad experiences on that street, but it is one of the most, in the last couple of years, they've done away with some of the noise laws. So it's gotten really, really loud. But when I first started going to Thailand 20 years ago, they didn't have the big boom boxing speakers. Now it's so loud. I took my sister there. She came to visit me in Thailand just a couple of months ago for the first time ever. It was her first experience in Southeast Asia, and she's hooked. She loves it. She's ready to go back. But she struggled, and I struggled because it's so loud on that street now. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, there are people from all over the world there, both working. There's a lot of Burmese. There were a lot of Cambodians. I'm not sure if that's true in this moment because of conflict that I just had a couple of weeks ago. I've read that almost 500,000 Cambodians have gone back to Thailand, who were in Thailand working for peanuts, but at least there they can have, it's like immigrants here in America, and I'm sure Canada as well. Even in Belize, do they have immigrants that come there?
Oh yeah. Because they're part of like CARICOM, the like Caribbean, like commerce zone or whatever. So they actually just recently opened it up. So there's like 4 or 3 other countries now. I can't remember exactly who they are, but they can kind of come and go freely, almost like in Europe, like in the Shenzhen region, where you can just kind of like travel around. If you have like a European passport, you can kind of just go freely. They're starting to do that here. So yeah, you get lots of Guatemalans and some of the other like closer Caribbean nations. There's some Mexicans, not a ton, but Belize in general is very multicultural. You have you get foreigners from Canada, US, Europe, Australia, South Africa, and then you actually have there's like an economic agreement with Taiwan here, so you get a lot of Taiwanese. They essentially run like all the stores and stuff here, like a grocery store. There's no big chains of anything, so it's all kind of these mom and pop shops, and a lot of them are run by Taiwanese nationals. And then you have Mennonites, and then you have descendants, what are called the Garifuna or Garifuna, or like the descendants of freed slaves, and they've been here for a long time and settled into fishing villages and stuff. So their culture is like deeply rooted, by the sea. You have mestizos, so like people who have come like from Spanish kind of descendants, and you got British, like old British, so you have like nationalized Belizeans, but they have like a British heritage, so they're like white, but they speak with like a Creole accent, and it's super interesting. It's a very interesting mix of cultures here. Canada is like known to be very multicultural, but I feel like it's quite siloed here. It's because it's so small. I mean, there is the Mennonites like to keep to themselves and stuff because they live a very different style of life, but a lot of the other groups just live shoulder to shoulder in communities together, and then you have the Mayan culture here. So it's a big mix of all sorts of cultures from the region and the world. It's super interesting. Yeah. So kind of back to what we were kind of first talking about. So many people are hesitant to travel because they don't, it's kind of outside what you're, supposed to do, and that like American dream. And you've talked about sort of leaving the American dream behind.
My situation is a little unique because I started traveling at 25 years ago. And I didn't start traveling because I was walking away from the American dream. I started traveling because I didn't want to start corporate America. I didn't want to get roped into the expectation of the American playbook, right? And lucky enough for me, my dad was very supportive on the idea of me traveling. He spent 4 years in the service in Darmstadt, Germany, and it completely changed his life. So when I told him that after I graduated college, I don't want to work for you, I want to go travel, he was like, dude, go, and don't come home until you're ready. So that started everything for me. So I kind of grew up into my young adulthood on the road and learning. I got to relearn things about what I learned from my family, what I learned from my environment, what I learned from my own culture. And I got to try on if that was my own reality. If those things made sense for me and the expectations of what are expected of an American fresh out of college. Yeah. And then once I got a taste of what it felt like to be out in the world, my favorite word to use is alive. I've never been able to duplicate the way I feel home when I'm home as when I'm out on the road. Even when I don't speak the language, even when I'm lost somewhere, even when I'm low on funds, low on money. There's something about being able to navigate myself around nooks and crannies of the world where there aren't a lot of Americans, or the ones that are there have left America and understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, we were kind of similar. Like, we wanted something different, right? And coming here has provided that. Just the urgency or something of life back in Canada was just, I don't know. It was just something that we just weren't interested in anymore, And when you're in it, you don't realize that you're kind of in it, and that there's like something else out there, right? There's a different way of doing things. And yeah, so I totally get that. I want to touch back on, because I know you said life of travel. Everyone thinks, oh, you can't have a family, and like part of me obviously doesn't believe that, because I've moved abroad with my family. But do we really travel? Like, we did try to travel for a bit, but our kids were quite young and it was a little bit of a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to like try again at some point. But for, say, somebody who is thinking that, oh, I have to be single, what do you see is kind of the false logic in, oh, I can't travel because I have kids?
I think the false logic is, I can't travel, I don't have time. There's an expectation that by a certain age, you're supposed to have this. By a certain age, you're supposed to own this. By a certain age, you're supposed to have done this. And those are all just parameters built and told to us by the outside world or family or society or whatever culture you come from. And, I've written about it plenty. There have been times where I've been in some third world bathroom mirror looking at myself going, what are you doing? Through my 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I don't think that there's anyone who's honest with themselves that wouldn't have those same questions, whether you're doing exactly what you thought you wanted to be doing, or you're doing what everyone else expects you to be doing and you're successful at it and you have all the materialistic things. At some point, you have to ask yourself, what's important to me? And I knew at an early age that I didn't want to be on my deathbed with regret. So I may be an 80-year-old man mopping the floors in some Cambodian cafe, but I promise you I won't have any regrets or any questions on, what if I would have done this? What if I would have honored my heart and just said F it and gone and traveled? That's what I've done. So I think everyone's, from where I come from in the States, especially down in the South, people are driven by fear. We live in a society that is hamstrung by fear of outsiders coming in here or us leaving this country. And it's so unfortunate. And I think it speaks to the word ignorance that we were talking about a minute ago. We just don't know. Despite the current climate, Americans are some of the most giving, generous, helpful human beings on the planet. They're just ignorant. They're scared. They've been taught one thing that's just not true. And I guess I could throw gullible in there. I mean, given the mindset of a lot of people that I love and care about. I don't want to bring politics into your podcast, but the reality is things are shifting in this country at light speed, and not for the better, in my opinion. And that's why I think it's very important that people like yourself and me share about the experiences that we have, where you're broken down in some poor, impoverished village in Laos where you could be taken advantage of, where you tried to give them extra money and they wouldn't take it. That's what humanity's about, right? Like, and Americans, Canadians, humans, no matter where they are, would do the same thing. We want to help each other. I've seen it too many times. I've been on the receiving end of it too many times. I've been on the giving end of it plenty of times. I love helping people, and I love being helped by people, especially people that I wouldn't expect would have the means or the wherewithal to help. Fear and time are two things that keep Americans, maybe North Americans, Canadians as well, from stepping off. And I think that there's this expectation that we're supposed to work until we're 65, and that's what our dad did. That's what their dad did, and have enough money to take care of our families. And that's one of the reasons why I'd never had a family. Simo is honestly, there's part of me that feels like I'm just too selfish. I wanted to live my life the way that I wanted to live it. And to bring a child into this world, if I wasn't sure that I wanted to have one, would be nothing short of unfair. And I never had that internal intuition that I've got to be a father. Some people have that. I've got to be a mother. I've got to be a father. I never had that, for better or worse. And I've had so many people who love and care about me tell me, dude, you'd be such a great dad. And that sometimes like tickles a little curiosity inside of me. I'm sure you can speak to this having young kids, but it's got to be pretty neat to see a little mini me running around. But I've been so dialed into wanting to fulfill my inner knowing of being free and out in the world that, I've kind of stayed secluded in my efforts.
Yeah, well, I think this is like important, right? Because there's really no one right path, despite what like cultural memes will say, right? That, you know, you have to go to school, get an education, get a job, get a house, have a family, right? Like that's just one way to do things. It's not, and maybe it's a very common way, but it doesn't mean it's the only way. And I think too, what you said about regret, that definitely like triggered something in me, because that's exactly how we felt when we decided to move here to Belize. Because they like the thought of waiting and then maybe never doing it and then wondering like, what happens? What would have happened if we just tried it? And that just became too great for us. So we just said, you know what, we're just gonna try it. And we kind of told ourselves that like, no matter what happens, we're not gonna look at it as a failure, right? We just tried something. And there, you know, there's a lot of stigma I find around like kind of the expat community, that like if you go somewhere and then leave, like you've somehow like failed or something. It just seems weird to me, because it's like it actually takes a lot of balls to make a move like that. And yeah, so what you find that it wasn't for you, you move home, you do something different. It's not a failure. I just feel like it's more of like the people who are too scared to leave, who maybe want to but can't get over the fear. They have like created that stigma to make themselves feel better for like not doing it, because it's like at least they're like avoiding the potential of failure. But I think it's important to be able to pursue those things you want and not to have regrets. I know I now won't, you know, moving to Belize wasn't exactly what we thought it would be, but I still don't have I have zero regrets over doing it. So I think, even if we don't end up staying here and we leave and we go somewhere else, you know, that path was the result of coming here. Right. And like and you never really know where you're going to go unless you try to do these things and you should be doing the things that you truly want to do.
Dude,
in your life.
You did it, right? Like when you're 85 years old and you got grandkids on your side and you say, hey, when I was a young man, I just up and left. And everyone in my family or in my culture would have thought that it was crazy to take my young children to a developing country where it's unsafe, unstable, hot, mosquito driven, all the things and you're doing it, man. Like whether you stay there or you don't, you're doing it. You're doing something that a lot of people can only either talk negatively about because they don't know, which is just back up to the word ignorance, or maybe there's a part of them that secretly wishes they would do it, or they could do it. Maybe not Belize, but somewhere else, anywhere else in the world. Nobody knows what anyone's like. That's one of my favorite questions to ask people, even at this grocery store. If you go anywhere right now, where would you go? Money's not a factor. Where's your there, and if you don't have any curiosity about wanting to explore another country, then we don't have a lot in common. We just don't. Getting outside of this country for me at such an early age, 25. Actually, I was younger because I went to Cuernavaca, Mexico when I was 22, on my own, with my own money, without anyone having to regard or consider anyone else. 25 years old, being shot over to Western Europe changed me as a human being. What's the quote? A mind expanded can never return to its previous form. And there are so many people that I care about that may never know a version of themselves because they're too committed to fear or the false narrative of time. And, a lot of my friends are now, they've got kids and some have grandkids, and they have a responsibility that they feel like they have to honor. And I respect that. I don't have shame or throw shade towards anyone else's decision. Everyone has their own life. I'm just here to try to ignite some curiosity and some compassion for the rest of the world and how interesting it is to experience it and taste it and feel it and smell it. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies, as you know. I've had plenty of upside down experiences, but they've also helped shape me into a much more tolerant and accepting and patient human being. a lot of who I am and a lot of what I'm about is human connection and compassion and consideration. So a lot of my stories are heartfelt, and there's sympathy involved and empathy. And but I started traveling when I was in my mid-20s. So there was a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, which I haven't shared a lot about. I was even hesitant to share that story about Peru because I have some readers who followed me over from Facebook where I never talked about women, late nighters, all nighters, all those kinds of things. But the reality is it's part of my story, and I shouldn't be ashamed, or I won't be ashamed of experimenting the world. A wise man once told me, I heard you say this a couple of days ago, I was listening to one of your things, when in Rome, right? And I had this guy, slip me a small bag of pure Peruvian cocaine. I'm gonna give it a go, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think there's a way to balance things out, right? Like I tried opium in Southeast Asia. Did I fall into like the habit of just chilling out in a den and just smoking it all the time? No, but I had the opportunity to try it.
Yeah,
and I did.
Yeah,
and I'm no worse off for it. So
yeah, my consideration always is towards people whose family have struggled with those types of things. I mean, I come from a family of addiction, so I'm no novice when it comes to speaking about those things. But yeah, I've definitely dabbled all across the world. I mean, I spent 10 months backpacking across Central and South America, and drugs are prevalent. Drugs are prevalent in Southeast Asia. They're prevalent everywhere. They've never been the definition or the reason why I'm doing anything. But have I had fun and experimental and experienced certain things? Absolutely. And I'm not ashamed of that.
So what, I know you've mentioned that you like to make meaningful differences for locals. And I think I've read something about you make like micro, like, I don't know, was it small, not donations, but like,
micro donations. I collect.
Yeah, is that what it was? Yeah. Okay. So what's that exactly? Can you kind of explain that a little bit more in depth and why is that?
Sure.
Important for you.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I mentioned earlier that part of who I am and what I do is make connections. And, amongst my travels, I've befriended so many local people who have bent over backwards to try and make me feel welcomed and like family. And last year I was in Nepal at one of the little coffee shops that I went to every morning. I became really close with the barista. Her name's Pushpa. And one day she was telling me about her mom and her dad. She lives 8 hours away. Her village is up in the mountains somewhere, and she decided to leave home, and they saved up for a year to send her to barista school, which was $250. And she got her barista certificate and is now working at this coffee shop. And comes from not much. And she was telling me about her parents. I said, "Hey, do you have a picture of them?" And she pulled out this dude. It was might have been the first edition of a smartphone that had been ran over 13 times. Every crack that could have been cracked on that glass for it to still be together was there. And she's like, "I'm sorry, but this is my parents." I'm like, "It looks like a scrambled cartoon." And she said, "Yeah, this was my oldest sister's first cell phone, and it's been passed down to my older sister and then me. So I'm the third owner of this cell phone." And I got to thinking, at that point, I hadn't started my Substack, but I went on social media on my Facebook account. I have a decent following there of people who pay attention to my travels and have for the last decade. And I just put it out there. Hey, I've met this beautiful young girl. She calls me Dai, which means brother. I call her Baini, which means sister. And every day when I see her, she's like the best part of my day. She's just pure love and joy. And I told the phone situation, and I said, "Let's see if we can pool enough money together to buy her a new cell phone." Dude, within 48 hours, I had raised $700 for a new cell phone. And then people kept contributing. And I raised enough money to pay her salary, which is only $220 a month. But yeah, we did that. And then I invited her to my guest house, her and her boyfriend. I brought her upstairs, and I was leaving soon. And so I told her that I had a gift for her. And then I gave her a couple of photos that we had. And then I said, hey, I want to buy you a new cell phone. And she's like, no, 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 no. So like insistent that was too much. And I hadn't even given her the month's worth of salary yet. So I had to like basically mentally arm wrestle her into submission for me to buy her a new cell phone. We got on the back of motorbikes, went to the one street in Kathmandu where they sell electronics. Had to like pull her up the escalator and into the shop and say, okay, pick something out. And we bought her a new cell phone. And that was November of last year. Every week, dude, she's sending me videos and photos of her family, of her life. And since that time, I began collecting. So to answer your question, that's how it started for me. I've donated plenty over the years to people who I've befriended, but I've never polled my audience and said, hey, let's come together and make a little difference for people's lives that I built these bonds with and these relationships with. So since that time, I've done it a couple of more times. I don't know if you read the story about my friend in Phnom Penh. My With Gusto audience made micro donations, and we sent his Cambodian daughter, to school for a year, because if you want a teacher in Cambodia that speaks English, you have to pay extra. It's like $250 for the year. He reached out to me and said, I don't have the money right now. And the greatest thing he said to me, dude, is, I don't know if I'll ever be able to pay you back, but when you come to Cambodia next, you'll never have to pay for a tuk-tuk ride. Well, I put it out to my audience, and Simo, within, 4 hours, we had enough money to pay for her to go to school and an extra, a couple of $100. I just sent it all to him. And there's something about that. Yeah, there's something about that for me that feels like I'm on to something bigger here. And I just look forward to getting back out on the road. I'm currently back in Dallas, and making more connections and creating more bonds with people that my readers can also meet through my stories, and we can continue to contribute and make bite-sized differences in those people's lives.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And it is amazing too, like how like small a donation can like make a huge difference. It's people. And I think a lot of people don't realize, how little a lot of people make in a lot of other countries around the world. Like even here in Belize, the hourly rate here is $2.50 US. Is like, it's pretty standard here. Most people, that's what they make. And you can't survive on that back home. And, and that's like, people go to Starbucks and spend $15, and it's like, that's like, a good portion of what someone makes in a day. And, and it's like, you can give that to them, and it makes such a huge, huge difference. Right. And, man, that's awesome. Like, kudos for you for doing that. That's amazing.
She's amazing. So is Porn, my buddy. I'll say this story. If you got a minute, I want to tell you a little bit about this Porn guy. So, I was in Phnom Penh at the end of last year, and I met this tuk-tuk driver, and he and I ended up spending several days together. But the very first day that I met him, I told him, you pick me up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I want you to take me where you would go if it was your day off. And lo and behold, he took me down by the river an hour outside of Phnom Penh, and it was just pure Cambodian. And to your point earlier about the Cambodians seeing your buddy with red hairy arms, he took me to this village, and where we were sat, and these kids were afraid of me. And I've done so much traveling, I feel like I have this craft of being able to disarm people, but these kids had never seen white skin before. And I'm a head taller than Porn, and he's trying to coerce them over to come say hello to me. And they wouldn't do it. They didn't know him, but they still hid behind him because they recognized that he was one of them, right? Mm-hmm. So we sit underneath this bamboo hut. There's like 12 huts where Cambodians locals go just to go sit by the water on their days off. And 3 or 4 people from the area come over and try to sell us food and drinks. And what have you. And this older woman comes by and he said, if we're going to eat, we should order food from her. So we ordered some food from her. And maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 meters back were those kids, and they had a stick and a ball. And you've seen kids that can make like gaming systems out of dirt, stick, and a ball, right? And the ball may be flat, but they're so creative and resilient. But these kids were going at it. And I said to Porn, I said, hey, they're all of them had just shorts on. They were all rail thin. I said, hey, ask them if they've eaten today. So he yelled over to them in Khmer, and they said no. And I said, call them over and they can eat this food. And he said, it's your food, you paid for it. And I'm like, let's share it with them. So 5 or 6 of them all came over. They sat in the booth or in the hut next to him. They didn't want to come my way still. And he starts talking to them in Khmer. Of course, I can't understand, but I pull out my phone and I start recording what he's saying with video, and record a couple of minutes, put my phone down. We share our food with them. They come, he makes them thank me, and we pay. We spend the rest of the day doing temples and going to a couple of other cafes and getting smoothies, and takes me back to my place that night. I'm totally knackered. A couple of days later, I went on a date with a friend of mine, a Cambodian girlfriend of mine, and I pulled out my phone and I said, hey, do me a favor. Tell me what he's saying to these kids. And she said, okay. She watches it. She watches it. Bong, who is this guy? I said, he's just a tuk-tuk driver I just met the other day, but I like him. He's a really good guy. She said, no, this is a great guy. He's telling them no matter what they do, try to go to school. He knows how hard it is to go to school. He knows that their parents may not have money, but please try to go to school, or else you're going to end up like me, driving guys like him around for $2 or $3 a day, standing in the heat every single day. I beg you, as an older Cambodian who knows if you don't have a dad, I'm sorry. All these things that were like, he was really trying to teach them life lessons. And I just felt so moved, touched, and inspired. And after she told me that, I'm like, this is somebody that I want to latch onto. So him and I have become, I text with him probably 3 or 4 times a week. And his daughter's the one that we sent to school for a year. And that's why when he asked me for the money for school, this was before that. Him with those boys was before this. When he asked me that, I'm like, I'm making that happen for sure.
What struck me too in Cambodia is just like, it's that Civil War history is so fresh still. I mean, this was 20 years ago that I was there or so, but the people were so accepting of it and just, wanting to move on. And they were all like, we found them to be very like happy, kind people. And they still had like a certain, pride despite the like, it's a brutal history, that period, that brief, it's that whatever, 10 years or whatever that was, or 6 years. And, it was, but it was something that really struck me, and I would love to go back to Cambodia if I ever make it back to there.
Let me know when you do.
Yeah.
I know a guy.
Yeah,
He'll pick you up from the airport. He's a good dude, man. He's a really good dude. The history's brutal. It's straight up genocide. One of the cruelest 6 years in human history. 1/4 of the population was exterminated, and that was 40 years ago, and there's still ramifications from it to this day. But
is it still like one of the heaviest mined places in the world? At the time, it was like there was only 6 million people in the country, and there was like 10 million mines unaccounted for or something like that. So it was still very common for like, and these anti-personnel mines that they like in the rainy season, they float. They're like made out of plastic and they just float. So they'll go and like clear a field, and the rainy seasons hit, and they flood back in, and then the farmer comes and plows his field, hits the mine. It maybe doesn't kill him, but it maims him, and then he can't work. And it was tragic, man. It was fucking tragic. But like the resilience of them, and just like the desire, or like the insistence on being like happy, I found inspiring. And like while they like conveyed their history, I never got the sense that they were like had this like a victim mentality surrounding it. You know what I mean? They didn't really feel like sorry for themselves or anything about it. And I just found that admirable.
It's one of the, you asked me earlier and I said the region of Southeast Asia, but Cambodia is one of my favorite places on earth. Out of the roughly 80 countries that I've been to, and I say roughly because I'm not sure, I've lost count, it's between 78 and 80. So I just like the round plump number of 80. So I use that. And that's the reason. You just totally encapsulated it. The tragic brutality of what happened there, and they don't have a victim mentality. They're a very resilient culture, and I'm sure you've seen most of the photos that you've seen of me. I'm wearing a scarf, and that's a Cambodian krama, and I wear it all the time. And I don't wear it for fashion, although I do like the way it looks. I like the way it feels, but I wear it to remind me of how lucky I am and how I feel when I'm there, to have experienced a culture that has been through so much and they're still so resilient. They are one of the friendliest. They're not the easiest egg to crack, but once you crack that egg, once you learn to speak a little Cambodian, Cambodians and Burmese are two of the friendliest cultures on the planet. They're so playful. They're so full of joy. They're so full of resilience. Yeah, man, I highly recommend that you take your family there at some point.
Yeah, it's definitely like on the list. I know my wife wants to go. She's never been to that area and she wants to go as well. So, yeah, once I think the kids will have to be a little bit older. They're 3 and 4 right now. So I think I would like them to be a little bit more self-sufficient before we do a trip like that. But
when and if you go, please reach out, because I've got friends there that would be more than happy to connect and look after you.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, honestly, man, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. Any kind of parting words for listeners, just advice for someone who's, hesitant to get out there and do some traveling? What would you say as a little bit of motivation for them?
You said something earlier about, you used the term another way or another option. And I think people just are not fully aware that, first of all, you have a choice. We all are products of our choices. And, one of the things I used to say to all my friends when I was trying to convince them to go travel is just buy the fucking ticket. Everything will take care of itself. Buy the ticket and watch how everything, because it has to. If you're going to be on that plane, you've got to do this, you've got to sell this, you've got to cancel this, you've got to make all these changes. If seeing the world or traveling or whatever your leap of faith might be, if it's truly important to you, I say, make a commitment, buy the ticket, buy the whatever it is that will get you to the finish line of what your ultimate goal or what your ultimate dream is. I never in a million years thought that I would be traveling 25 years after I started. That wasn't the plan. Never was. I want young Americans to travel because I do feel like that we are ignorant. We're walking around like this thinking that the rest of the world either hates us or wants to be us. I'm not trying to convince anybody to go travel for a decade or two. All I want you to do is experience something other than what you already know, because what you've been led to believe and what you've been led to feel and be afraid of, it's not reality. I've been all around the world and I've only felt in danger a handful of times. In some of those situations I put myself in. So the world's not a big, scary place. It's actually really small, and we're all connected and we're all one and we're all alike, and we all have the same wants, needs, and desires. Maybe not desires, but the same wants and needs. And yeah, I think travel, I've said it before, it's the best education money can buy.
Yeah, and, right on. You gave me some goosebumps on that one.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna keep following along. I like your stories. I like your writing style, and where can people find you? I know you're on Substack with Gusto, and where else? Are you still on Facebook? I know you mentioned Facebook, but
yeah, I get on there once a week, and every time I do, I start sneezing. I'm allergic to it, man. There's just too much. I'm in the south of the the divided states of America, so there's so much stuff that I actually agree with, but as much as I see it being posted, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. So I spend the majority of my time on Substack. I'm a storyteller. I write about human connection and all the adventures that I've been on. The name of my particular newsletter is called With Gusto. My name is Adrian Landon, and you can find me through Substack or through Simon's podcast.
Right on. All right.
Thank you, brother.
Oh, yeah. And where are you off to next?
Possibly Iraq for the first time in October or November. I've got a buddy who runs tours over there, and he's running a tour. And last time I spoke to him, he's like, "Dude, you got to go. It's amazing." I'm like, "Man, I don't want to be on a tour with a bunch of other Americans." He's like, "Go on the tour, and then we'll spend 2 weeks afterwards, just you and I, visiting my friends and connections there." So that's a possibility. Things have cooled off over there. We first started talking about it while we were bombing Iran, so it wasn't really an option for me then, but it seems like it's not so much of a hot spot now. But every time anyone asks me what next, Southeast Asia is always the answer at some point. I will end up back in Southeast Asia. But until then, Iraq, India, Nepal, and then back to Thailand and Cambodia at some point.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll follow along. And yeah.
One day.
Maybe in a couple of years. I think the kid, kids have got to be, I think, at least like 7 and 8, I think, before I do that. But they still kind of don't always listen, right? And I don't want to be. Yeah,
but you're doing a good thing, man. You're doing there. If more parents did what you did, this country, this world would be more compassionate, more tolerant, more understanding. So I admire what you and Lily, what you guys are doing, and hopefully one day our paths will cross. I think we connected on Substack for a reason, and I look forward to taking a selfie with you one day.
Agreed, man. And thanks again, and all the best.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Yep. See ya.
Peace.